So I'm finally going to continue. This is years later after the video that I left when I was up at the seminary at actually a Red Cross fire evacuation retreat that was wonderful. There weren't that many people there. Everybody else had been covered. I had driven around like a maniac trying to get out of the smoke, and I guess it finally happened, and it was really nice to just have a place with other people and support. One family had lost their house. It was super sad, but they had, been given a lot of donations from people. It was a very rich county that we were in, Marin County there, and they were able to get a new place and refurnish and buy everything they needed again, clothes, everything. What was hard for me is that I was very, very sick at that time. It didn't look like it, but I was in an incredible amount of pain. I actually have been for 10 years. I finally got a hold of gabapentin and a great orthopedic doctor who didn't have any problem with gabapentin and gave me the second highest dose. I thought it was dangerous. It's actually not. I don't find any bad effects. And being in pain is terrible, especially for 10 years, almost every day, all day straight. And it's from physical therapy that has saved my life. From what would have been a head tumor normally in Western medicine, suddenly at age 52. I'm now 62 and a half. Because of things I've done in my life and the momentum I've created and some Eastern medicine secrets that came into my life there in California, I have saved my life. And God has saved my life. And I think I planned it before I came here into this lifetime so that I could share it in America with Western people, how not to die of a head tumor all of a sudden at age 52. And what happens is people don't, this isn't common knowledge, but it should be, that as we get past 50, when we get wounds that we haven't cried out, that we haven't done trauma therapy for entirely, and I do mean entirely, it calcifies the fascia. And the fascia is actually connected to the nerves. And my vagus nerve is all hugely impacted. And because I had done Rolfing over 30 times, which Ida Rolf did not want it named after her, but that is myofascial release. And I had learned that in Boulder, Colorado, and had it done at the school 20 times, and then a good 10 more because I had a boyfriend that learned it from me instantly. I learned it over the time I was in Boulder for 20 years, and having received it, I was able to do it. Not the full 10 sessions of structural reintegration that is recommended, but myofascial release for trauma, for bad spots. I don't know how else to say it. Bad spots can happen in any part of the body. I had a friend who fell off of a ladder. He paid $50 for a massage and it didn't heal him. I healed him in about 10 minutes and he said I was magic. Well, I just read where the injury was in his fascia, loosened it up and released it out of there. If that doesn't happen, it'll calcify. And fascia, you can look it up on Wikipedia, has qualities like water that it can turn from solid to water, like ice or water, and be tears or else be eliminated through the bladder and urinary and everything. So you have to have really good water. You need to have, when you have an injury like mine, a really big injury, you need to have a higher iron or blood in your body. So water was the first thing, and alkaline water is very, very, very optimal. Sweet water, you've got to have that if you suddenly find yourself with calcified fascia. Surgery, they told me once I got the MRI, they're like, oh, my doctor just couldn't even look me in the eyes. He was pale. He thought I was going to die, probably on the surgery table, because I hadn't died of the head tumor. I had opened up my nerve through a Tibetan secret, which I'll tell you. And then suddenly I had calcified fascia. Almost my whole upper body was frozen. I was in super amount of pain, crying, and I finally got the MRI. And the nurse peeked out from behind his shoulder and said, "You're going to have a real lot of pain bringing that up out of your fat, through the clavicle, because it's like in the nerve, in the unimpacting nerve. It's a small spot in the river. I don't know how else to say it. It's like a really intense spot where it's been very painful, and many times over the 10 years, it does lapse around the whole wound in my body. And it's really the vagus nerve. I was hurt as an infant by my satanic uncles. Hopefully they're not anymore. They know from my dad how to get out of that. And they saw him when I scattered his ashes when I was 19. I saw his face up in heaven with the sun. And the bad uncle told me later, who wasn't there, that his brother told him that, well, he made it to heaven. And what my dad did was apologize profusely, take responsibility for his sins, try to figure out how he did it, did therapy all day long, locked himself in the VA hospital so he wouldn't hurt any more children. And he was such a strong person, such a warrior, and really good person, that for what had happened to him, he passed very little along. And he role modeled and also made me do a whole lot of athletics and hard work and academics, and just be a warrior. He never said the word, but he trains warriors. And he had a gentle and a funny and a very strong side that made you want to do your best for him. And as his daughter, he was a Marine sergeant, a veteran from Korea. I pretty much had to do what he wanted. So I grew up swim racing, cross-country ski racing. I was given the choice of all sports. Those were the ones I excelled in. I definitely had a problem that I couldn't tell him. I was supposed to be absolutely healthy, but my left shoulder was not well, and I skied and swam, raced anyway through it. And because of that, also, I have saved my life because of just keeping it mobile, keeping the system flowing. I ended up rowing. Even when I lived in Sausalito, I rowed a boat and kayaked. I held my babies. It hurt. I had a neck that was crooked and had holes in it. Chiropractors were like, "Oh my God." I think they knew that I had a fatal neck. But the thing is, I was a nanny for a couple from China, legally, who saved people's lives. And they each gave me a hint that helped me save my life. And then I learned from a Tibetan master another part of it. So I was set up from all that work, good nutrition, good water. But then I woke up one morning super, super sick. Super, there's no word for it. It's not germs. It's calcified fascia. And if you don't dig yourself out of that grave, you will die. And I knew how to dig myself out. And it's bit by bit, it's layer by layer, which is also how emotions work. I was in therapy from 18 to 20, in extremely good therapy, where I was taught emotional healing. And how I was healing was through self-love, and whatever layer you're working on, it's always fear, actually fear of fear, and then the fear. Once you love it, it turns to anger. Once you love that, it turns to tears, to crying. And then you've got a new layer that'll pop up in the next few days. It's just wonderful until you're done. And God does that. We have an innately amazing self-healing system. No matter what terrible tragedy happens to us, if we do things right, if we do like a good midwife, we can give birth to a healthier body than we've ever had. We can heal it all. And that's what I've done. So I have to share it, because I know people have had even some small part of what happened to me happen to them. And they're going to run into having calcified fascia in their 50s or 60s. Like this one woman had a car wreck, and suddenly she's got Parkinson's because her calcified fascia from the unresolved trauma started to hit a certain nerve and giving her Parkinson's. Well, she was given the option to somehow travel to Sedona, Arizona, and pay $200 an hour for myofascial release to get her out of Parkinson's, which the worst thing that could ever happen. I mean, my Lord of mercy, another friend had it too. And I had the feeling I could heal them because what I do is myofascial release with no hands. And with the neck, the Chinese woman taught me, the Qigong grandmaster taught me that in China we stretch our necks like this, not like in America like that. When I did it at that time, I was like, oh my goodness, I got a bunch of holes in my neck. Well, I don't now. And that's probably about 13 years ago. So my health crisis came up after I was a nanny, but I'd been given the hints. And I had an electrical short in my nerves, which run more on the left side than the right side. And that her husband, Ming Tong Gu, has a healing retreat, wisdom healing lineage, Qigong lineage. He has a healing retreat in New Mexico. And if you get a fatal illness and you can afford it, go there because they know what they're doing. Absolutely. But what I'm sharing is because there is a lack of help for people. I know there is. There's a lack of good counselors. I don't want to insult anybody, but there just is for this intensity. And infant wounds, I had also a trauma bond because my mother was a narcissist. That's my worst karma. I don't know what other karmas you could say I have, because sometimes we pay forward. Sometimes we take on things for the service to humanity. So don't feel shame for what your body's going through and healing, for what's within you because you've been traumatized or hurt by sexual abuse. Don't let that shame you. It was shameful for them to have passed that plague onto you. And what you do is take responsibility for not feeling the shame, for working extremely hard on self-love. And I do mean extremely. You've got to love it. You've got to eradicate the shame. And you've got to get out of learned helplessness. One way or another, you've got to get moving. You've got to love it. You've got to stay frozen and meditate. Whatever reverse psychology or forward psychology you need to do with yourself, do it. I just now went on a run. My knee hurt. This injury affects even my knees and my legs and my feet. But more and more and more, it's gone. It's just gone. I've, layer by layer, bit by bit, I have melted it and dug myself out of a horrible grave. For the first 2 months, I couldn't drive. After that, I couldn't be trusted to drive all the time, but I could finally drive. And it was going very fast back then. I was working about 50 hours a week, but it wasn't as intense. As you get more to the core of a wound, emotionally or physically, like this one, it's going to get more intense, but not maybe as much time spent. And the same amount, or if not more amount, of self-love will be required. And so I'm going to teach you the Tibetan part of what I did. The Tibetan part was given to me in a dream by Dharma Sangha. He had me stare at all these different heads one at a time throughout creation. And I would stare without a mantra, without a thought, just stare for a few seconds, and it would burst into a golden Buddha head. And, I'm raised in Wyoming, so these things are not that familiar to me, but I was watching it with my own eyes all night long. It was not a dream. It was a reality. So a few days later, I'm lying in bed because I could never sit up meditating because my neck hurt too much, even before the crisis hit. So I realized I've got a short that I learned from that Qigong master, and I knew where it was, right at the lower part of my neck, and I stared at it, and a waterfall of light burst upwards. I was like, whoa, no pain. So I did that for 5.5 months and opened up the entire nerve, came up. It was the vagus nerve. I didn't know the word back then. It was really all on the left side by, I guess, Mother Mary's Ascension date, July 18th. It came out the top of my head during a prayer call, and me staring at it through meditation every day for about an hour, and rainbow lights, which was me, bursting upwards. Well, I thought I'm healed. No, we are in physical bodies. So first energy, and then physical has to follow. And the place in between that is the fascia. The nerve hits the fascia. The fascia is where emotions run. It's where the energy of the earth or even other people around us run. And we don't see it unless we're psychic, but it has been seen by psychics and proven. So I woke up all of a sudden just in a grave of cemented fascia because I had opened up the nerve and given it consciousness. And so now it wanted full consciousness of what had happened to me back as an infant. I had done hypnotherapy. I had done a lot of therapy for what my dad did to me when I was young. When I was 18, 19, 20, I worked like an athlete, which is what he taught me and role modeled. And I worked hard and finally got over that. I mean, I got all the emotions out, but I knew the emotional quotient for how to stare at my nerve. And so after a couple days of just crying, I finally sat myself down and stared at the worst pain, and it broke. A little bit of it broke and melted in, I guess, water. And I kept doing that. And after 2 months, I was able, like I said, able to drive, able to do more. I could hardly move this much. I'd have to hold my cell phone up here and barely text. It hurt to text even. Fortunately, I had really good water at home. I didn't have to carry it. It was not heavy. I just had really good water and didn't do much. I cried a lot. I cried a lot for the first few years because it was so intense and so painful and dramatically horrible. What had happened to me? And I was now old enough and had the emotional wherewithal and strength to love myself through it. And it was not easy, shall we say. I finally got a therapist, EMDR therapist, who was amazing. She was very good with helping mothers and babies bond. And I had done work as far as making a cassette tape of my ideal birth and playing it at night. So I had these ideal parents in my mind that I had done to my, I'd given to myself in my early 30s as part of a spiritual group and an amazing Great Suggestion by Oceana. And then I was able in EMDR to have my good parents come and rescue me with the EMDR nodes in my hands and rewired my subconscious so I wasn't drawing upon a really rough childhood and a narcissist mother and a pedophile father. He finally did apologize profusely, but that was a rough childhood. A lot of over discipline, like I was saying. It worked out in the long run, but still, it wasn't helping me feel good about living while I'm going through this horrible 10-year experience. That was about year 5 and 6. And that EMDR worked and I was happy and I was able to keep on going and do this work, which first it was 50 hours a week, then it was 40 after a few years, then it was 30. It's more like 10 now, maybe 20 sometimes. And the solar flashes do make it go faster because that makes the nerve have light and want to un'impinge more rapidly and come out. Wherever there's pain, I stare at it nonchalantly and do the forwards and backwards, the way I'm guided by my own body, and stretch and pull, and boom, that nerve comes out. The calcified fascia breaks. The body knows how to set up leverage, and that's something it does on its own. And then it starts hurting or even itching. I can sometimes even poke my knee and something will break up here. The worst of it is, where it can be seen on an x-ray is my neck and even the structure of my neck. And nobody expected me to live. They didn't tell me. Chiropractors, they said I had a double bad curve and I had to go in a brace when I was in high school, up against the wall, freezing on the floor. It didn't do a thing. I don't think it did anything good. It just made me cold. But what I was able to do over this last 10 years was actually completely change the structure, take out that bad curve. It hurt. It hurt a lot going through it. I should have been on gabapentin a while ago. But I was using marijuana in California, which not good for you over a long time. It just isn't. It works, but it's awfully ungrounding, and you'll make mistakes being ungrounded in life. And nothing in excess, as Socrates says, and know thyself. So eventually gabapentin is better, and it helps that nerve unimpinge as well. So it's better to be conscious of your life and enjoy it and be happy about the life happening around you. So I enjoy everything, even the motorcycle going by. So I'm so grateful and in appreciation for all the things that I've been able to accomplish, like having a garden. I've been able to have a kitty for 3 years. I couldn't, like a day before I got that kitty, I was too busy healing myself. So cooking, gardening, everything that I do now, I don't drive yet, but I let go of having a car. I'd rather heal myself, and that makes me bike. It makes me walk. I just now went for a run. It was painful, but by the end of it, it wasn't. And I walked and, got breath in my lungs, and it gets emotions out. I hated all that. I hated all that stuff when I was a kid. I had learned helplessness. I didn't want to do anything. I even had fibromyalgia. So that's another thing I have to tell about, is theta healing. In 2011, my fibromyalgia was removed in one quick, probably 5-minute theta healing session, long distance. And then I had bipolar, the kind that's kicked in by trauma. I even think the fibromyalgia was when I was an infant, by that trauma kicked in to me. And I got, first, there's 2 genes in every pair. These are malefic. They're not given by the Creator. And in 2011, I got rid of the first gene, which was a rapid wind in my brain. The second gene I removed when I got trained to be a theta healer 5.5 months later, and I suddenly had more office space in my brain. I smiled for the next 3 years because having bipolar is really hard. I never did have a freak out, but I was going more and more manic in the summers. I was more a depressive type. I would be very depressed when fall came, and I just want to sleep all winter like a bear. So, and it was just really hard to, I'd want to interrupt in conversations. It was hard to give and take because I had that rapid wind in my brain. I'd have trouble going in and out of experiences or buildings because the pressure, it was just, I didn't know I had a rapid wind in my brain. It'd be a nice day outside, and I just trying to deal with the whole discrepancy of it all. So when I had even the first gene removed, she forgot to do the second. She was a new theta healer, newly trained. But I instantly even forgave people who gamble, because you want to distract yourself if you've got bipolar. For me, I was taught a lot of discipline, but I think eventually I went to marijuana for distraction. And when you have rapid bipolar, using marijuana, you've got to have some discipline, some grounding, because you're going to be way up in the clouds with that, and you're going to have to stay grounded. But it was also entertaining for me once I learned how to do it, and I didn't start that till I was older in life, and had learned how to meditate a lot and do holy name and the breath. And still, it was just not good. I have to say, marijuana is not the best. Okay, men are selfish and greedy with it. It's hard to, I'm not in a state where it's legal. I think hemp THC is much safer. There's way less of a gap. I'm allergic to alcohol, so there's no other way for me to have had any recreational relaxation. And for me, it's a social drug, but for some, it's a freak out or recluse drug, or something just to do once in a while. But it's also really, really helpful for MK Ultra programming, which I definitely have suffered from what happened to me. The learned helplessness, the lack of self-love, definitely was helpful for that. But ultimately, you want to just be real and be yourself and find the joy in that. And I have now, and that's a really good thing. So I think that's enough for now. I think I've said everything I've been wanting to share with people, because I don't want to sit on this and not share it when people could be helped. If you had any injury as an infant that you didn't get to cry out, any trauma, It could come up really harshly for you when you get older. We're not taught this. And I think it's very hard to find a good trauma therapist or love yourself enough or do it when you're busy working and making money. But it's so important. It's basically deadly if you don't. So, especially if it's a very bad trauma and if there's a lot of tears you didn't cry out. So, I just want to send love and peace and happiness and honesty to everybody, because truthfulness is actually the highest vibration. I learned this yesterday. The highest vibration measurable in a human being is not compassion, it's honesty. So just be honest with yourself first and then others. Okay, I love you. Bye.